Yet, Sigidum Hanana Abawelsik, and it Kani Gera and Southeast Alaska. Hooked Guinea, it's Skeek di Wayu. Lach Skeek di Daeru. Get Lachlich Stad you will Washku. Shu Machlichasha you will Zogu. Chiefs, noble men, noble women, children of high-ranking people, and all the people of Southeast Alaska. My Tsimshian name is Eagle Always Watching Over. My English name is Gavin Hudson. I come from the Eagle clan, Kitlachlichstad. The people of the island, of Annette Island, is the tribe that I come from. Metlakatla, Alaska is where I live. Adzixagodu no will silamamskasum. Adalu amhodu no will needsasim. Sagatwan. I am proud to stand and sit with you all, and I'm happy to see you all today. I'd like to acknowledge and give thanks to the Akpan, whose territory we're in, and I'd like to acknowledge and give thanks to the Metlakatla Indian community for sending me here. Thank you very much to the Central Council of the Tlingit and Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska for hosting the Southeast Alaska Language Consortium. And thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of my people. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for including the Tsimshian in your efforts. It's true that we're Americans. It's true that we're Alaskans. But we're also something else. Something much older, deeper, and more profound. We are Haida. We are Tlingit. And we are Tsimshian. In these modern times, it is too easy to give in to ego consciousness that only sees division and competition. The false rivalries that are sometimes apparent in bars and basketball games are a direct result of colonization, which brought the loss of language and with it some loss to our history and values. Some folks like to dwell on who won which war. Yes, wars happen between our tribes, but they are a small part of a rich and complex history that we all share. The Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian have ancient relationships built upon commerce, trade of foods, bentwood boxes, canoes, bulligan grease, copper, woven blankets, baskets, and hats, songs, names, and all kinds of regional specialties and specializations. Our three tribes in particular are similar in nearly every way, whether it's form line design, weaving, carving, harvesting medicines, hunting, fishing, berry picking, seaweed picking, clam digging, displaying our crests, building longhouses, feasting, or singing and dancing. We are far more alike than we are different. In fact, we're all so good looking that the only thing that really distinguishes one tribe from another is which language you speak. In the old days, lots of Tsimshians were fluent in Tlingit and Haida, as well as Chinook jargon, which was the old trade language. And there were lots of Tlingit folks and Haida folks who were fluent in Samalgich, the language of the Tsimshian people. These Lagach Algech, or translators, were necessary to trade relations. We all inhabit the same part of the world, side by side, so it has always been necessary to have open lines of communication. Only now, English is our trade language. While we rebuild, we'll speak in English, which is a rather new development, but what we're doing right now, gathering together, pooling our resources,
which one is the thing for this picture?
Trading ideas, learning from one another. These activities are very, very old traditions that are shared by all our peoples. We are so similar that what is good for you is good for me too. So I'm honored to be part of this gathering, to tell you about the state of the Tsimshian language. The language of the Tsimshian is called Tsimshian, which translates to real language. It is a beautiful, beautiful language, and it is in grave danger. But let me begin in the year 1916, the year my beautiful language began to recede. That is when the government came to Metlakatla, tore down our village school, where the teacher and the students all spoke Tsimshian, and built a government school where only English was allowed, and children were punished, humiliated, and beaten for speaking their first language, the language of their ancestors. That school taught generations of Tsimshians to be ashamed of who they are. That shame and self-hatred has stifled any desire to pass the language down to the next generation. It has been a long and steady decline into darkness that we are only now, I hope, beginning to emerge from. Thanks to the efforts of the previous generation, my parents' generation, to revitalize the Tsimshian culture, my generation has been raised with a robust pride in who we are and where we come from. But the cruel, cruel irony is that now that we once again have a generation of Metlakatlans hungry for Tsimshian, there are only 6 fluent speakers remaining in my community, and they are all senior citizens. 2 of them are in their 90s. In our neighboring community of Ketchikan, where there's been a small but persistent population of Tsimshians since the early 1900s, there is only 1 fluent speaker left, and he is in his 90s. In British Columbia, Canada, where there is a much larger population of Tsimshians, they have about 80 or 90 fluent speakers, and all of them are over the age of 60. Many of them are in their 70s and 80s. This is alarming. This is an emergency. Because if we don't take quick, decisive action right now, we all will be the ones to watch the Tsimshian language die. To say that out loud is terrifying. Although this prospect is heartbreaking and difficult to listen to, we cannot deny the reality that with each passing year, we lose more and more fluent speakers. That is a fact. And if it dies, the Tsimshian will lose the thing that makes us who we are. We will be lost. How can we know who we are if we do not know what our own name means? How can we know who we are if we don't understand the words to our own songs? Whose stories will we tell if we can no longer tell our own? How can we be proud and healthy without the one fundamental piece of our identity that sets us apart and makes us special? How can our children be Tsimshian without Tsimshian? These questions are scary, but as my friend and Tsimshian teacher Sarah Booth always says, there is always hope. And another friend and teacher of mine, Mr. David Boxley, says, it's not too late yet. There's still time. But we are running out of time. There are still enough fluent speakers remaining that we can save Tsimshian, but only if we act now. No half measure or band-aids will suffice. The only way to save Tsimshian is to produce a new crop of young fluent speakers, and this costs money. So this is the point where we must begin. We need to find funding to pay fluent speakers to teach and to pay learners to learn. We need to make it a full-time job for 12 young men and women to become the next generation of fluent speakers and teachers. Woo! This can happen in 5 steps. Number 1, identifying suitable fluent speakers who are able to teach, and then pairing them up with dedicated, disciplined young learners. Number 2, pay the teacher and pay the learner well enough to be able to pay their bills and provide for their families. Number 3, make it the responsibility of these well-paid teachers and learners to spend 8 hours per day, 5 days per week, to do nothing but work on the language.
That's right.
Number 4, carry this program for 2 or 3 years at least, which should be long enough for some of the learners to achieve fluency. And number 5, upon completion of the program, establish a Somali immersion school to pass the language on to the next generation of Tsimshians.
Woo!
It won't be easy. This will be an uphill battle for the rest of our lives, for the rest of my life. And we all need to help each other. We need all the help we can get from one another, but from the state and federal governments as well. It was the government schools that took our language away. We don't need apologies. We don't want apologies. What we want, what we need, is funding to produce new, young, fluent speakers who can extend the life of the language and teach the next generation. We need funding to create immersion schools, which means developing a curriculum and teaching materials, and creating full-time Somali teaching positions. This is the most important issue of my time. This is the most important thing I will ever work on, and I am declaring now that I will dedicate the rest of my life to this effort. Because having a living, vibrant language means that our descendants will grow up in a community where they can hear and speak with the voices of their ancestors. This will provide a positive identity upon which many lasting successes can be built. Thank you all very much for allowing me to address you today. Bless you all. May your names always be good. Waiwa. Thank you.
Thank you.